The citizens of Flint, Michigan have been drinking contaminated water, and it's finally starting to get a little bit of attention from politicians, not just on a local level, but also on a national level. Now, the water has been contaminated with lead, and if you look at images that are now circulating on the internet, you can see just how obvious it is that the water is contaminated. Apparently, the officials in Flint, Michigan changed the water source, and when they did so, they cut some corners, and unfortunately, the piping that was utilized leaked the lead into the drinking water. So people have been getting sick. This hasn't been getting a lot of attention, and so the Democrats decided to talk about this a little bit during the last Democratic debate. So let's take a quick look at what Hillary Clinton had to say and then what Bernie Sanders had to say, and we'll give you some more details on what's happening.
Well, Lester, I spent a lot of time last week being outraged by what's happening in Flint, Michigan, and I think every single American should be outraged. We've had a city in the United States of America where the population, which is poor in many ways and majority African American, has been drinking and bathing in lead-contaminated water. And the governor of that state acted as though he didn't really care. He had requests for help that he basically stonewalled. I'll tell you what, if the kids in a rich suburb of Detroit had been drinking contaminated water and being bathed in it, there would have been action. So I sent my top campaign aide down there to talk to the mayor of Flint to see what I could do to help. And I issued a statement about what we needed to do. And then I went on a TV show and I said it was outrageous that the governor hadn't acted, and within 2 hours he had. I want to be a president who takes care of the big problems and the problems that are affecting the people of our country every day.
Thank you. Senator Sanders.
What Secretary Clinton was right, and what I did, which I think is also right, is demanded the resignation of the governor. A man who acts that irresponsibly should not stay in power.
So they're speaking about Governor Rick Snyder, which we'll get to in a second because he did respond to those calls for resignation. But before we get into the details of what the president's planning on doing and what could happen in the future with this crisis, I want you guys to jump in, share your thoughts.
Well, you know, Flint, Michigan is almost, they've had so many problems over so many years. They've been steeped in such poverty. It's kind of becoming like the city that America has forgotten. And it makes me so angry that they continue to be forgotten over and over again. We have a very large problem in this country of income disparity. And when all of a sudden you're not being useful to the country, you get forgotten about. And I'm so proud of the Democrats for bringing this issue up. Mm-hmm. This is not an issue that any Republican has talked about, even still today are not talking about, unless they're in response to the Democrats that are talking now. And I do think that there are so many aspects of our society that are being tucked away and hidden about and forgotten about that need to be brought to the forefront. So good for them.
Yeah, honestly, during the Republican debate, there was absolutely no mention of this issue whatsoever. So it does feel good to know that it's on Democrats' radar. But it is unfortunate that Governor Snyder doesn't seem to be aggressive enough when it comes to combating this issue.
Yeah, I think that's my issue too with it, because when there are situations like this, it really makes you question not only the credibility, but the motives of the very people who are supposed to be keeping you safe. Now, when they made this transition in April 2014, they had people complaining about like rashes and hair loss. And this was something that was entirely preventable. Like, you know, when you have public water and you don't use corrosion control treatment, there's going to be lead in the water. And so they didn't use the treatment. So then they're going to pretend that they're surprised that there's lead in the water. And even when it was declared a state of an emergency, a few days ago, it still took 5 days for Flint to get bottled water, which is it's unacceptable.
Yes, so a lot of people have been donating bottled water to the people of Flint, Michigan. And to your point about the state of emergency, President Barack Obama did declare a state of emergency in Flint on Saturday. Sanders had already called on Snyder, a Republican, to step down, but Clinton used the opportunity of her closing statement at the debate to argue that if the crisis had happened, again, in a rich Detroit suburb, he would have been quicker to act, right? Now, Hillary Clinton's statements were absolutely true.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, and I also really love Bernie Sanders' strong statements about it as well.
Yeah.
Now, Governor Snyder did respond to it. He said political statements and finger pointing from political candidates only distract from solving the Flint water crisis. Well, it didn't seem like you were that interested in solving it.
Seems like you were distracted. Yeah.
Really? I mean, you don't like the finger pointing. I can totally understand that.
Frankly, finger pointing is the only reason why he had any kind of action in the first place.
Exactly.
And when all of this information started surfacing from people who were like, hey, like I'm seeing, blood levels in children, lead blood levels for children rising, and all these other sort of scientific analyses going into how much lead was in the water, the guy who released that, they started calling him a rogue employee. That sounds
insane.
like finger pointing to me.
Oh,
yes.
my God.
Right?
He also said, we are committed to ensuring every Flint resident has access to clean and safe drinking water. To find out more, and then he links people to a website. Now, the president's actions authorize the Federal Emergency Management Agency, also known as FEMA, to coordinate responses and cover 75% of the cost for much needed water filters, filter cartridges, and other items for residents, capped initially at $5 million. Now, according to the Detroit Free Press, I mean, they get into the details as to why this happened. So Flint's drinking water became contaminated with lead after the city temporarily switched its supply source in 2014 from Lake Huron, water treated by the Detroit Water and Sewage Department, to more corrosive and polluted Flint River water treated at the Flint Water Treatment Plant. The state Department of Environmental Quality has acknowledged a mistake in failing to require the addition of needed corrosion control chemicals to the water that cause lead, which causes brain damage and other health problems in children, to leach into the water from the pipes and fixtures. Again, this is something that, it has been covered by the media a little bit, but this is a crisis. I mean, this is drinking water, okay? This is not a privilege. It's something that we need to survive. And these people have been forgotten about.
So something very similar to this scenario happened in D.C. from 2001 to 2004. And so that can kind of give us some insight to what the trajectory is going to look like for Flint. And basically, they, families that tried to then sue for the damages that their children faced because of lead poisoning are still not getting fair trials, and they failed to give them a class action suit. So we can kind of see what the future is going to look like for the Flint case, and it's unfortunate. It's wrong. It's morally wrong, is what it is.
And the problem with all of that is that the residents, who are mostly minorities and mostly poor, do not have a voice to advocate for them, and the wealthy communities do, and that's really, it becomes about who do we talk to, who provides the voice for the voiceless, and we need that. We need those advocates in society, or we're going to have states of emergency all over the country.
Absolutely.